Solo always does shots first. Singing
Solo.
Yug. Singing Yug Nug.
Chucha.
Yug Nug.
No.
At the Cantina Club.
Wait, there's something very weak coming through.
I want to say one thing real quick. I thought the soundtrack betrayed that moment a little bit. I think John Williams would have done a much better job, or the guy from Rogue One. I forget his name, but it makes me wish that Jerry Goldsmith was still around, because he would have done a phenomenal job with the soundtrack on that movie. There was nothing really wrong with it, but it added to that kind of weird gloss and sheen over the whole movie that made me think I was looking at, action figures doing a movie, or like I said, the school play. It was such an obvious moment that it was a little manipulative and a little too much. But
yeah, the soundtrack hit moments
the moment a little bit for me. But if you're a person who's innocent enough and optimistic enough to not even pay attention to that and just enjoy the moment, yeah, it was great. But the soundtrack almost took me out of it.
Yeah, overall, since you brought up the soundtrack, I'll just give my 2 cents on that. I enjoyed some of the throwbacks to John Williams' score. I thought those were done well, and it almost seems to me, I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but it seems like they're trying to turn the old Asteroid Field track into the Millennium Falcon theme. It seemed like whenever it did some Daredevil thing, it was going right into the asteroid, field theme again, which I like. That's some of my favorite music in the entire Star Wars saga.
I loved hearing that. I will say, it was only for a few bars, and it was. It was great. And there was another soundtrack moment, not to derail you, and I apologize, but while we're thinking of it, when they started the whole movie, they're implying that Crimson Dawn works for somebody. And I was trying to figure out, as soon as they dropped the first reference, Gundark was sitting next to me, and I said, who is it? Is it Jabba the Hutt? Because I knew, scripts don't have any throwaway lines. They're built to, they don't have a line in there for no reason. So I know, if they're going to mention it, they're going to imply it or show it at some point. So I'm like, okay, who is it? Because I had no spoilers. I didn't know. And I thought it was Jabba. I was trying to figure it out the whole time. But later on, they mentioned something about the boss of Crimson Dawn again. And this, comes in the soundtrack. Just like a bar or two or something. And I instantly said, okay, it's a dark side character.
Wait a second.
And so then I started saying, is it Palpatine? It sounded like a little bit of the Emperor's theme, or that theme from the opera in Revenge of the Sith, or Maul's theme a little bit.
I think I got it.
I never guessed Maul, but I thought it's a dark side character now.
I immediately thought Maul.
I think I got it.
As soon as that music hit, and then you see the profile, just still completely hooded. Maul.
Well, this music was way before that. This was before he ever came into the picture. It was when all the characters were still together, before Dryden got killed, and they mentioned the boss. Actually, when they told the story of their tongues being cut out, and while the story got darker and darker, the soundtrack got darker and darker, and there was all of a sudden this dark side theme for just a second, and that's when I knew, okay, the Crimson Dawn is run by the dark side. I wonder who it is. And so anyway, a little tip of the cap to the soundtrack guy for that moment, but it didn't really make up for some of the spots where I thought he was heavy-handed and took me out of the movie a little bit. But
for the last
time. What did you? I know Corellian really liked Darth Maul.
And you said you guessed it, kind of. You felt it coming that it was going to be Darth Maul.
Good work.
When did you know? When they showed them the profile?
Oh yeah,
I
didn't have some sentient moment of this is what's going to happen. It just once they showed him from the side.
You've watched Clone Wars, right?
Oh yeah.
So you would have known better than anyone. You probably watched more of that stuff than any of us, so you would have known better than anyone that it was possible that it could be him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, that being said, I was just as thrown by it as anybody. I thought it was great that, especially the first night I saw it, half a theater at least let out just a collective "what?" And everyone literally the guy sitting next to me literally leaned forward, clasped me, "what?" Yelled it.
What?
They showed that it was the face shot of Maul, and I loved it. I ate it up. I mean, there couldn't have been a better cameo as far as I'm concerned. Oh, that was amazing, and it. To me, the portent of things to come, I'm on board.
Okay, well, things to come. Where are they going with that? What do you think is going to happen?
I don't know, but here's the thing: if he made reference to Dathomir, and he specifically instructs Kira to meet him on Dathomir. If they show Dathomir and the Night Sisters, I will lose my mind.
And they mentioned, like I said, no part of a script is ever by accident. They mentioned Tatooine, and they mentioned Dathomir. So you're putting
the next
planets
film's going to have those two storylines, I think. Yeah, they're going to have. We're going to see Jabba.
And you've got criminal organizations, which we know in Clone Wars have had clashes before, which is the Hutts and the Pikes. What do they call the Pikes and the Mandalorians and the not Crimson Dawn. What I can't remember when.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Maul's brother made that consortium of. They called it. They had a name for it.
The Shadow Collective.
No.
Shadow Collective.
They took it over from some people, and they said we're the bosses now, and I can't remember what it was. Anyway, those two planets are probably. You're right. I didn't even think about that, but probably that's where they're thinking about going next. Yeah. And that would Dathomir. It's so great in the Clone Wars, that planet and that whole vibe and everything. It's such a gothic horror thing. If they toned it down to make it for kids, or if they overdid it to make it cartoony like Temple of Doom, then I almost say stay away from it. But
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
But I think Gundark had a point that they might be implying that Kira is going to get some kind of training from Maul.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, we've never had, one of the things Greedo's always complained about is we've never had dark side training shown in the films.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So, I want you to remember, I've also complained since 1999 that we don't have a female villain.
Yeah.
In Phasma or whatever. I've been saying it for almost 20 years now, that if they had made, the Clone Wars finally did it. I don't know why it took a cartoon, but if they had made in the prequels a Sith apprentice or whatever, Sith master female to go up against Obi-Wan after Qui-Gon was dead, that would have just been awesome. And they really dropped the ball on that. So anyway.
See, another Easter egg that makes me think that might be the direction they're going is the scene where she uses the martial arts on Kessel. And she mentions Terras Kasi. That's Terras Kasi that I used, and I learned it from Dryden, and we assumed that Dryden was taught by Maul, maybe. So maybe this is already a training that Maul might pick up on with her to carry further. And it involved, when she fought against Dryden at the end, they're both using bladed weapons, so I'm sensing maybe dark side Sith-like training.
Sure. Lightsaber is the ultimate bladed weapon. So, and they chose an actress who's known for playing a regal part, coming into her power and deciding how to use her power and all that stuff. So they have those thoughts going on. I will say that Maul appearance for me could have been so much better than it was, because I just couldn't help but thinking it was just dumbed down for just general audiences and stupid people. But, why was he wearing the same outfit from the Phantom Menace? I will after many years later. It's been at least, I don't know, how many years would it have been? Because Anakin was a little boy and then he grew to a man and turned into Vader, and it was just still 10 years before New Hope. But
I'm saying we're looking at like 20, 25 years.
He's still
since episode 1.
He got cut in half.
It's just a black cloak. No. It's not like it's some specific design.
Look just like his first appearance in the hologram.
This is Sith issue 101.
Not only did he have to appear, I think it would have been better if they had left his face partially in shadow and his voice would have informed you who it was, but he has to not only take the cowl off, then he has to use the Force for no reason to summon his lightsaber.
Yeah, he does turn on the lightsaber for no reason.
I did wonder about that. I was like, what's the point?
And then he has to stand up off of his toilet seat or whatever he was on when she called him, and his legs have to just to the last. I'm surprised she didn't say, "Oh, Master, how are your droid legs doing?"
I had nothing to do with
it. It was so obvious. I wish they toned that down and made Maul a little different. In the Clone Wars and in Rebels, he still looked really similar, but they purposefully evolved his look and everything. He still wore a lot of black, but they exposed more of his tattoos on his chest and shoulder. He had different outfits. He didn't, he wasn't just trying to still be the guy from Canada. That was a little. I almost felt like they said, "Is anybody going to remember this guy?" And so they just made it as dumb as simple as possible.
That is correct.
It almost.
I get what you're trying to say.
Don't fail me
Still,
again.
it was too cool. It was a cool cameo that was worth it. I don't care if it was dumbed down. It was cool.
I agree. I don't even care.
And it's dumb little subtle things too. But I can't respect a villain that's sitting around on the commode reading the paper. What? For his henchman to call him, and that's all he does all day because he answered it instantly as soon as she called. I wish Dryden had instigated the call when he thought he had the situation under control, and then they have the big fight, and then all of a sudden that you got an idea that something ominous is going to happen with that ring. Well, all of a sudden the alarm goes off, whatever, and Maul appears, and she's like composing herself from after the battle, and she has to tell him the story because otherwise he's just sitting there waiting for these minions to do nothing. It's like he should have been like,
exactly. Thank you, Sharon.
You're going to regret this.
Oh, I've got a message to call these losers back or whatever, and then he calls right in the middle. He doesn't wait on them; they wait on him.
Yeah,
it is pointless.
It's like you're gonna summon Darth Vader. Only the Emperor could do that.
I don't like this.
And even that took a minute. Take me out of the asteroid field. Let's get a clear transmission. Well, the Emperor's, I don't care. We got to get a clear. You had to wait a couple of minutes.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
I'm dumb, but it made me respect Maul a little less. I hate being.
I find your lack of faith.
I don't care. It was Maul. I loved it.
Me too.
It is pointless.
Or Maul. Such a great dude.
Yeah, he's such a great guy. Period. Yeah.
They can sit around on the commode all day and cogitate over how they're going to take over the universe, and then they make their one good appearance, and I'm all down with it. So I don't care what he was doing.
We're an easy touch. We fan service. We love it. We're down for it.
He could have been tap dancing, and I'd have been, yes, it's Maul.
Wait a second.
Like, I spent my kids Poseidon. What do you want?
Exactly.
Obi-Wan once thought as you do.
So were we overall happy with the film? I mean, do we come to a consensus about it as the Cantina Club, or do we not have a consensus?
Well, let's just give a quick rating overall from each of us and see what we come, because I've already given my 8 out of 10. Greedo, what would you say?
I know we're running long on this, but I have something serious that I want to bring up.
No.
I don't know if now's the time, but before we wrap this up about our overall opinion of the movie, there's things that I really didn't like about the movie. We haven't gone over all the things that I liked even. I mean, I guess this is a lot longer than I thought with 3 of us talking about it, but
Looks like I'm
there was a lot of things I liked. Okay, and I loved the shot, and I've only seen this once, and I just have my impressions from it. But I love the shot where Han backs up the ramp and he's firing on Kessel.
Oh man!
Of the blaster reflecting
off
his
illuminating his face. Yeah, that's amazing.
When I was a kid and Han pulled out the blaster on the stormtroopers in Mos Eisley, I was a Han fan for life. After
absolutely.
That.
Yeah,
we're in trouble.
It was so close. It was so close to being something epic there, and it's like. Have the stones to really go for. They whiffed on so many epic moments, but that was a good moment. And if the movie had more of that, and more like the shot when Han swaggers in with Lando on the table and stuff, I loved all the practical effects. I loved all the creature designs. I thought were really good because you could really mess those up, and they were all great. I want to say that the movie was too dark. There was a blue tint over a whole lot of it that I just couldn't wrap my head around.
That's one of my favorite things about it.
No, dude, you can't really defend that. When they're on the Millennium Falcon,
oh, yes, I can.
You cannot. When they're on the Millennium Falcon talking, and the whole ship is white on the inside, and you still see the detail as the shot is dark. That's too dark. Yeah, and there's no excuse. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of all these dark movies. Movies like Underworld. We were talking about Underworld and all these movies with bad CGI. They're all dark. They're dark for a reason, so you don't see hell.
Wow.
I just want to see the freaking movie. It was not a dark movie. I don't care what anybody says. There was no dark tone about that movie at all. It was a fun.
No, I agree. But it was atmospheric. I love the aesthetic of that.
But it could be where you could see it. It was just too.
I didn't have a problem seeing it.
About it is please stop doing this. Show us. Don't. It's great, and then there's all these show us, and you can't show me when it's too dark like that.
It is pointless.
But what didn't you see? I'm trying to figure out what didn't you see.
What is it?
I want to see everything. We're talking Falcon on Falcon, it was too dark. It's like dark, and it didn't
Tell me, what's
scenario.
troubling
So it was just too dark. But
I don't know what you're talking about.
anyway, to move on,
Colin, point of order, Corellian.
Wait a second.
really gonna fight me on this?
Corellian has the floor.
Help me, Gundark. You're my only hope.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Oh, no.
I, Gundark, club secretary and self-declared emperor of the Cantina Club, hereby declare Greedo expelled from this meeting. Temporarily.
What? How?
Okay,
Why? What are you gonna say?
Okay,
Hold on,
Corellian
sir.
has the
Sir,
floor.
Don't make me destroy you.
Sorry, am I interrupting anything?
Don't be expelled, Greedo.
I'm
Don't
not
force me.
saying anything. I'm giving a chance. He's sitting there.
Don't force me to expel
Speak
you.
up. Dude. Come on.
Don't
hope you know
force
what
me
you're
to expel
doing.
Corellian.
Okay. So before we even started recording, Gundark and I had this conversation that I specifically pointed out how much I loved the aesthetic of this film, and I loved the fact that it was dark and moody at times. Yes, it was light, and I get it. It wasn't supposed to be a dark, ominous feeling, but to me, just having, to me, I took it to be it's weather. It's like they're on the snow planet. There is no sun. It's completely overcast and snowing and blustery. It's not going to be bright and happy.
Okay.
It's going to be kind of cold, and I just it sucked me into the feel of that scene. And I mean, I get what you're saying about the stuff on the Falcon. Okay, maybe that was a little dark for your taste. I didn't actually see it that way, but that's all. But overall, I loved the aesthetic of the film. I just thought that the mood was controlled by that, and I loved it. I loved every bit of it.
Your skills
Yeah,
are
Way to
I
take my
thought-
point, just minimize it. Like maybe it was a little too dark for your taste. Yeah, when I just railed for it's too dark. So, but I still haven't gotten to my major gripe. Real quick, I'll try to make that.
I don't like this.
This is gonna be dumb. This is two things that are gonna be dumb to everyone on planet Earth, probably.
Tell
but
me,
to me,
what's troubling you?
this is me. I can't just change
What is
and
it?
accept this stuff. I did not like the Star Wars theme being used, the Force theme, whatever you want to call it. I thought it was heavy-handed and it was flat out wrong because this is in a time
no.
period before Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi's relationship. There's no Anakin Skywalker. There's no Skywalker at all. There's no Force at all in this movie. And it was a callback for simpletons, basically, to say, hey, remember, this is Star Wars. And
give yourself.
build a new theme. Give us something a little different. That theme, to me, really belongs to Luke. That's almost Luke Skywalker's theme music. And they
In
played
fact,
it.
that's what John Williams said when Mark Hamill asked him, "Where's my theme in the
He
original
said, "You are
score?"
Star Wars theme is your theme."
Yeah.
So I thought that was just for me. It wasn't a deal breaker or anything. I'm not gonna. I get it. I understand why they did it, but a bad choice. If I was in charge, I would have never allowed that.
Who made you the boss?
And you can hate me or not. I don't care.
Oh.
Secondly, and I'm not just talking to you guys. I'm talking to anybody.
No. I know.
Tell me, what's troubling you?
The dice. The dice. I've only seen it once, but this whole thing of the last two movies being about these gold dice is freaking ridiculous. I don't get it. It's silly. And not only is it silly, I mean, those were a prop from 1977 that they threw on to make a joke about truckers and about stuff people had in their cars in the 70s. And, fuzzy dice on your... They've suddenly tried to degrade all the things that meant anything in Star Wars with The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, less or so, and prop up things that never meant anything. And the dice is a prime example. Like, you're not doing anything profound by suddenly giving meaning to these stupid gold dice.
Okay.
They were supposed to be the dice that Han threw to win the Falcon. That's their origin. Now they've changed it. They didn't explain where the dice come from. I guess they came from his dad, which is cool too. I'm open to whatever story the dice came from. But to redefine them, to make those dice about his relationship with Kira, which is what it was. Let's just be honest. Those dice are symbolic of those two characters. And by the end, it starts to change. It becomes more about Han finally possessing something and finally moving forward this destiny, which is what we associate the dice later. But for Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, and I hate to keep bringing up The Last Jedi, I apologize, but these are all, this is a shared universe. This is all, each film built on the next. Luke Skywalker reappears to his sister for just a few seconds, all we ever get. What does he do? He hands her those dice. So he gave his sister a memento of her husband's first love.
It is pointless.
I just can't get over that. Now, the Last Jedi, that was one of my favorite scenes in the movie, was when Luke and Leia reunited. I didn't totally get why they focused on the dice, except that it was a small object that Luke could hand off, and it symbolized, I think, what could symbolize Han? His blaster? Was he going to hand her a blaster? You may not agree with me, but if you think about it, so much significance was put on that symbol and on Han's relationship with Kira, and it's just bizarre that two characters that end up being his wife and his best friend are handing off this symbol of his first love.
I don't know what you're talking about.
See, let me jump in there, because I interpreted it. I see your argument, but I interpreted the dice differently. I thought it represented Han. And his relationships with others, not just Kira. I don't think it was specific to their relationship. I thought
it just started with Kira.
Yeah, it started with whoever. It may have been his father, like I said, that the dice came from initially, and it seems to me a representation of, if you're talking about the two dice representing two people who are separated, it seems to me more like it's the two sides of him. That he's a person who relies on luck. He wants to say that he's solo now and he has to rely on luck. But he also finds he needs other people, and the dice then becomes a representation of him racing through different catastrophes and barely getting out, pulling himself out of it through his wits and through luck, and relying on his blaster, relying on luck rather than the Force and or other people, but also the need for other people because the dice start changing hands. And so to me,
and they're also gold, which implies heart of gold, purity, which is ultimately what Han Solo is at its core.
So to me, it wasn't. She was just one of the people in that series of relationships that helped build who he was. And so the exchange between Luke and Leia in Last Jedi seems kind of like the culmination of what those dice represent. That there are relationships he built that helped to establish who he was as a person, not just him running solo all the time. So for me, that wasn't an issue. But I can see your argument. And the idea about two dice representing two people and the separation that occurs in the film that's an interesting interpretation. But it didn't bother me the way that it bothered you.
I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add to any of this. I just think I do see your point, Greedo. I do.
Yeah, but I'm reading too much into it, and
I think it's just it may be a case of whoever the screenwriters, whoever may be trying too hard, to attach meaning to something that doesn't mean anything. It may be just that, but I guess I've just kind of let it go in one ear and out the other. I hadn't really paid that much attention to it.
It is pointless.
So that's kind of how I've been approaching it, basically.
Well, it was almost like I like everything you said. Gundark is right on the money, and if the dice represented all of that, and Han going through and learning stuff, and I liked the fact that at the end they're still with him, and you can tell he's moving on from that relationship, and it's about him, and just like she told him, it's about you and Chewbacca now. It's not about you and me.
Up at the moment when they both sit down in the piloting seats, the Millennium Falcon, and those dice go up, and so it's like, okay,
I didn't see him put the dice up there. I just saw them at the end shot hanging there.
No,
so
he puts them up.
Prepare to make the jump to lightspeed.
So it was like, this is and that's when it felt right, that there's a partnership that he's relying on.
And you could say that my gripe with this is not about this movie; it's about the last one.
Right.
So it's kind of irrelevant, but it's
pointless.
a little bit of I wish they would think about all these things a little bit more, and a little bit more with a little more heart towards what these characters actually are and everything, and what they're telling their audience. I guess I'm hypersensitive now to being told, get over the original trilogy, forget the past and all this. But they keep going back to the past and trying to reanimate the past and rewrite it. Yeah. and not being as respectful as they should be.
Who made you the boss?
So anyway, overall impressions, right?
Yeah, let's wrap up by determining if we have a consensus or not about the film. How do we feel overall about it? Corellian had an idea about our ratings. What are our...
Yeah. I would say overall I'd put it, but I still would keep it fairly high. I'd say probably an 8 if I had to put a number on it.
Okay, that's really good.
Yeah.
I hope you know what you're doing.
So you really enjoyed it, which I got from your initial impression video when I watched it.
Again, it was fun. Yes, it was lighthearted. Fairly predictable plot. But it was what I wanted, I guess, if that makes any sense. I wanted something like that was just kind of more of a summer blockbuster type, just popcorn fare, which I thought it was, and it worked for what it was.
Good.
All right.
Good.
I would give it a 6 or 7 out of 10.
All right.
Yeah, I would. If it didn't have Star Wars branded on it, and it didn't have Chewbacca, I would give it like a 4 or something, or 4.5, because it has those things. It's like a heist movie with a Star Wars skin or whatever. Then I give it like a 5.5, and maybe that'll change the more I see it. I do have a question. We did the recent rankings and everything, and it's too early to be possibly ranking this movie in with the others, but there was the question of, is it going to be better or not than Rogue One? And what's your feeling, Corellian? Because you loved Rogue One and you loved this movie, so
yeah,
which would you take to your grave?
Well, of the two, I would say Rogue One. Of the two choices, but again, it's hard to judge a movie that you've been familiar with for a couple of years versus something you've only seen twice. It's only been out for a week. It's kind of hard to really. It's going to take, like you said, it's going to take time. I've seen it a few more times to where I see where it really fits in the hierarchy of the films. But of the two, on initial reaction, yeah, Rogue One.
I think back to seeing them both for the first time, because I've only seen the Solo once, and the first time I saw Rogue One, totally different reactions for me. Rogue One was by far superior to me, and a superior movie-going experience. So yeah, I have to go back to that impression and say Rogue One was far better.
I choose Rogue One too. I think the characters are better in Solo. I really loved the legacy characters in that film, and I thought the characters took too long a time to build interest for me in Rogue One. But you cannot surpass that last hour of Rogue One with the tremendous finale with the battle, especially the space battle. Okay, we want to wrap it up?
Yep. All right, so leave us your comments on our Facebook page. Just search for Cantina Club on Facebook and you'll find us. We also have Twitter handle at 78cantina. And you can also email us at thecantinaclub@gmail.com, and leave us your comments, questions, criticisms, whatever you want, and we'll try and read some on the air in future episodes. So if nobody has anything else, until next time, we'll see you then.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye, and I'm glad the droid died. What? It was one of the most annoying characters in the history of Star Wars. I forgot to mention that.
Y'all know around here, Solo always does shots first. Singing yup no, yup yup. You're singing yup no, all right. Yup no, at the Cantina Club.
Come on, let's get out of here.
God. Skills.